glad you sat in that front seat? Got some bamboo here on the right. It's called Calcutta bamboo, but we call that fishing pole bamboo. Now we're coming up to our first bridge. This is the Osceola Avenue Bridge. And with all the rain we've been getting lately, this bridge keeps getting lower and lower. So everybody, watch your heads. Watch your heads, guys. It's low. A little sculpture on our left. Folks, that's Jeremiah. He was a good friend of mine. And this is Lake Virginia. This is home to Rollins College. And if you look to the right, the chapel, that's at the very center of campus. That's called the Knowles Chapel. That was built in 1932 by Ralph Cram. Mr. Cram also did the chapel at West Point, the military academy up in New York. This little canal leads to Lake Mizell. Lake Mizell is the smallest of all of our lakes here on the chain. It's only about 50 acres, but that's also one of the few lakes you can see from the road. So if you're driving around Winter Park and you're looking for the chain of lakes, these are hidden. You just see little tiny Lake Mizell. And this is a peninsula named Windsong, and it has 4 estates on it. Now folks, this first estate in 1927, that was the Winter Park Gentlemen's Club. You can imagine that as a gentleman's club in the 20s. Yeah, if those walls could talk. Rollins took it over briefly as a music department, but right now it's just a privately owned estate. So if you're fortunate enough to have one of these 4 estates, you can have your coffee and sunrise overlooking Lake Mizell, your sunsets and cocktails overlooking Lake Virginia. Not bad. All this property, that's about 55 acres, and that's the largest piece of undeveloped land in Winter Park, and that will never be developed, and that's thanks to a Jeanette genius. This is the Genius Estate, and Jeanette was the granddaughter of Hosmer Morse, one of our founding fathers here in Winter Park, and she married a man named Hugh McKean, and they took a trip to India, and when they returned, they brought back a male and a female peacock, and let them go on this estate. And over the years, these peacocks have just multiplied and multiplied to the point now they're the symbol of Winter Park. They're in all of our street signs, our manhole covers, right here in our city flag. And these birds are allowed to do pretty much whatever they want. And they do. They roam into different neighborhoods. They roam through your yard. They roam on your car, scratch your paint. They get on top of your pool enclosures and tear up your screens. Very, very destructive. But they are protected. So all you can say is it's just good to be a Winter Park peacock because there's nothing you can do about them. And they are delicious. Sound asleep in the back. Is Rollins College. And Rollins College was founded in 1885. And in 1885 they had about 60 students and the tuition was less than $100. Now they've got about 2,300 undergrads and the tuition runs between $70,000 and $75,000 a year. Very, very expensive. However, they've got a great scholarship program with the Alfond Inn. And the Alfond Inn is a 4-star hotel downtown Winter Park. All their profits, all their proceeds goes to a scholarship fund for Rollins. Rollins actually owns that hotel, and they use that just for their scholarship program. So about 85% of these students get some kind of remuneration for education. Now in 1885, this school was so small that the library only had 2 books. Can y'all guess which 2 books those were? Dr. Seuss. 1885, that was pretty ambitious. Think a little bit simpler. Bible is 1. What do you need in a library? There you go, dictionaries too, very good. That's all they had, a Bible and a dictionary. Now they've got a beautiful library, and they're known as the Rollins College Tars, T-A-R-S. And a tar is an Old English word, and it means sailor. This is their sailing team and water ski team department right here on our left. Dinky Dock. This is a public dock. It's public swimming. We got 2 boat ramps over here on the right. Any kind of boat you got, you can put them in right there, and you have free access to the entire chain of lakes. Now, if I have any anglers on board, that's the best bass fishing dock in Winter Park. I've caught more bass off Dinky Dock than any other dock on these lakes. So if you guys and gals like to fish, that's your spot right there. Now I've got to bring up the dock on the left with the blue chairs. Folks, that's the Rollins College study dock. You'd be hard pressed to ever find a book on that dock. I have seen coolers stacked up on that dock. But you got to be careful, because your next door neighbor in the Spanish Villa, that's where the president of Rollins College lives. So take a book down to that dock, save your scholarship. All of these other buildings are privately owned condominiums. It's Jeremiah. And that's probably the only alligator we'll see. We got some bananas growing right up here.
เยอะปะกันเติม เยอะกว่า
Y'all watch your heads for me one more time here. Here, watch your heads. I want to point out this oak tree on the left side of the canal. That oak tree is older than the United States. And if you look at the trunk on that tree, you can call it a mighty oak. Beautiful tree. They had a, what do they call them? An arborist. Thank you. An arborist came out and examined it and determined that it was about 310. Yeah, it's a live oak. During our hurricanes, we lose a lot of our laurel oaks because they don't have a very deep root system, whereas the live oaks have a really beautiful, deep root system. Keeps them anchored. Yeah. Where y'all from? Y'all you around for Ian? Yeah. Were you around for Ian? 2 years ago? Oh yeah. We had 4 feet of water. We were shut down for over a month. No, because it drained. We are on the same level as the St. John's. So when St. John's went down, that's when we went down. Now folks, this little boathouse over here on the right, that boathouse was built in 1890 by a Mr. Brewer. And Mr. Brewer was a carriage builder from Cortland, New York, and he would come down to Winter Park to harvest his lumber and ship it up north for his company. But he wanted to make Winter Park his home. He wanted to live here year-round. Except his wife had a beautiful estate up in Cortland, and she didn't want to leave it, come down here and live on this lake with all the mosquitoes and alligators. So in order to get his wife to move down here, Mr. Brewer built his wife an exact duplicate of her house in New York. That's the exact same house she lives in Cortland. 7 bathrooms, 8 bedrooms, 2 kitchens, and a ballroom. Mrs. Brewer came to Winter Park, saw that house, became a Winter Park resident. That's the boathouse. Where you can get boat. The estate here on the point, that house was built by a man named James Gamble Rogers. And James Gamble Rogers was one of our most prolific architects we had here in Winter Park in the 30s, early 40s. This was one of his last projects. He built that house for Mr. and Mrs. Rich. And Mrs. Rich was very particular. She wanted her main living room to overlook Lake Osceola. Gamble Rogers could do that as an architect. That wasn't a problem. However, she insisted on a clean white beach. And he was having a heck of a time trying to figure out how to do that, because our sand under here is kind of a gritty gray. It's not a beachy sand. So Mrs. Rich told the architect, you just build a house, I'll take care of my beach. And she did. She went to the world's most famous beach and got their sand. That's Daytona Beach in her backyard. You could do that in the 30s. Go to the beach, dig it up, bring it home. They won't let you do that anymore. Yeah, no way, your way. do y'all think of our super Walmart? That's going to be the biggest house on the lake, biggest house in Winter Park, one of the biggest homes in Central Florida. When they finish construction on that house, it's going to be 41,000 square feet. Put that in perspective, this house is 7,000 square feet. You can fit 6 of those into that one house. We're going to get into the Venetian Canal. And again, this canal was hand dug in 1870, but with this canal, all they were trying to do is attach 2 lakes. They wanted to attach Lake Maitland with Lake Osceola. So they just dug up an old creek and turned it into a canal. It's our longest canal. It's about 1/3 of a mile.
Biar 6 lại tao. Nó sao? Nó á?
Yeah, we got pretty orchids up there on the right.
Quay lên ha.
After the afties, the after party.
She's gonna walk home.
The after party. Literally after party.
And we're coming into Lake Maitland. This is our largest lake on the chain of lakes, 450 acres. We got one more behind me, then you guys are all set. Thanks for waiting, I appreciate it. Azalea Gardens. It's a beautiful little park right in the middle of Winter Park. And all of these cypress trees you see surrounding Craft Azalea Gardens, these trees are between 600 and 800 years old. Some of the oldest trees we have in Central Florida. And all that Spanish moss you see hanging from them isn't Spanish, it's not even a moss. That's an air plant. It does not hurt the tree at all, it's not a parasite. And in the 1800s, that's what they used to stuff mattresses with. So when you hear that old expression, sleep tight, don't let the bed bugs bite, that's where it comes from. Craft Azalea Gardens, open every day, closed at sunset. Estate is called Villa Toscana, and that was built in 1927 along with these other two. These three were all built in the 20s, and as we make our way around this cove, you can see they get a lot more contemporary and a little bit bigger. But this is such a great example of not only architecture, but look at the landscaping on that property. Nice guest house overlooking Lake Maitland. Estate. We call this house the Tom Hanks house. And the reason why is because Tom Hanks came to Winter Park and rented that house out for 3 months to do the HBO series From Earth to the Moon. And they filmed in that house night and day for 3 months. And when that movie came out, that house appears on film for 14 seconds. Yep, 3 months and we get 14 seconds. That's it. Yeah. Yeah, we were all over that editing floor. And if you notice, that is just a guest house. That's the same house. You see the same architecture. He just bought that little piece of land just to put a guest house and a pool in. Now that little bridge is the only way on and the only way off of this island. This is a man-made island called Isle of Sicily, and it has 12 acres and 10 homes. And folks, that is the most expensive real estate we have here in Winter Park. And it's not private. Anybody get on Isle of Sicily, drive around, do a little house shopping. Bring your wallet. Now that's the most expensive. Let me show you my favorite piece of property on this lake. Yep, this little tree. And the reason being is because at the top of that tree is an osprey. And last summer we had 4 baby chicks up there. They've all left the nest except one will come back and make it her nest. That is a multiple generation osprey have used that little tree as their home. And those decorations, oh, those were not done by an osprey. We had a skipper named Charlie, and Charlie would secretly come out and decorate that tree. And after we lost old Charlie, we kept up that tradition. So we just nicknamed that our Charlie Brown Christmas tree. He built that house in 1931 at the very height of the Depression, and he built it for Mr. Packard at the Packard Automobile Group. Mr. Packard sold that house when they merged with Studebaker. Now this very contemporary house here in the middle, that's Horace Grant's old house of the Orlando Mansion. And Horace was a good friend of the tour. He would see us out here and he'd get on a jet ski and come out and sign autographs and talk to everybody on the boat. Really super nice guy. They traded Horace to the LA Lakers, and the people that bought his house had to go in it and just gut it, take everything out. Because Horace was so tall, they had to lower all the cabinetry, had to lower all the sinks. He built a complete basketball court in his basement, which they turned into a ballroom. Gotta have a ballroom on these lakes, and we cotillions stuff. So I tell you, if you've ever seen a 7-foot man on a jet ski, that's something to see. And we're going to squeeze back into the Venetian.
She did Instagram too. I'll look at it.
was asking you, we do have cormorants also. But much, we got a lot more snake birds than we get than anything. They're everywhere.
to rồi, tân nắp rồi.
We're back in Lake Osceola. That's a tour actually from Dinky Dock. You can take a clear boat kayak tour. Now, folks, Rollins College has had some very successful and famous people who graduated from there. Buddy Ebsen was a graduate. That was Uncle Jed from the Beverly Hillbillies. We had Tony Perkins, who did several films. Probably his most famous was Psycho. But our favorite graduate was Mr. Rogers. Fred Rogers came to Winter Park in 1948 on a music scholarship, brought his piano, could not fit the piano into the dorm. So he called his folks in Latrobe, Pennsylvania. They came to Winter Park and bought that house right there. Mr. Rogers lived in that house from 1948 to 1961, and that's where he wrote the song, It's a Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood. I think that's one of the handsomest houses we have on our lake. That's Mr. Rogers' house. gray house with the white trim is where Mr. Capon originally built the home, and they had to move it to make room for a modern house. And they couldn't use the roads because of the overhanging oak trees. So what they decided to do was to float the house. So they took the Capon and they literally cut it in half like a cake, right down the middle. They had one barge, nicknamed the barge Fred, brought Fred over, put half the house on Fred, shot it across this lake in an hour and a half. Renamed the barge Ginger, Fred and Ginger. Same thing with the second half of the house, around an hour and a half. So within 3 hours, they had that house on site. It took them a year to glue that house back together, but that's how they saved the Capon. And they did this 10 years ago, not that long. So if you want to see a video of that house skipping across this lake, look up Capon, C-A-P-E-N on YouTube, and you'll see that video. Really clever engineering.